He was the future. He was the first of his kind. Centers were never supposed to play out on the perimeter and score from three-point range. Bob McAdoo broke the barriers of what big men can do in the NBA. But it wasn't just his style of play that was revolutionary. At his peak, he was outperforming every single star of his time. He was at his best in the 1974-75 season. He didn't just win the MVP, he had statistically one of the most dominant seasons in league history. It's time to put a spotlight on one of the most underrated players in seasons ever. I'm also collaborating with CLNS, NBA History and Storytellers. We'll have former players and Bob McAdoo himself give us their unique insight. Let's start with some context. This was McAdoo's third season, and people were just blown away with his progress. In his rookie year, the Buffalo Braves won 21 games. It was their third straight year of losing over 60 games. As bad as their situation seemed, there was a reason to be hopeful. In the second half of the season, Bob was inserted to the starting lineup and moved to the center position. Initially, their coach, Jack Ramsey, thought he was too frail to be the center, but thanks to this move, his performance soared. In fact, in the final 3 games of his rookie year, he nearly had 3 straight 40-point games. That was a preview of what he was going to do in his sophomore season. He went from averaging 18 points per game on 45% shooting to 30.6 points per game on 55% shooting. The Braves also increased their win total by 21 games. In just his second year, he won the scoring title and finished runner-up for the MVP. Nobody expected him to be that good this quickly. As we enter the 1974-75 season, the expectations that the NBA world had for him were through the roof, but I'm sure many of them couldn't have predicted this. Here were his insane averages: 34.5 points on 51% shooting, 14.1 rebounds, and 2.1 blocks per game. Did you know that the only other players to average over 34 points and 14 rebounds per game are Wilt, Kareem, and Elgin Baylor? He won the scoring title for the second straight year. He also posted the 15th highest scoring average ever. On top of that, he recorded the 8th most total points for a single season. In fact, he scored only 1 point less than Kobe Bryant did in his historic 2006 season. To give you an idea of how historically great his numbers were, let's compare it to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's best statistical year, which was the 1971-72 season. As you can see, the numbers are up to par to one of the greatest players of all time at his peak. Bob numbers are legendary, and they should be highly respected. But watching him play, you could tell right away that this was a special player.
You know, when you can shoot, I mean, look at Durant. You know, I was teasing one time. I was watching Durant in the game while I was coaching, and he was just pulling up shooting jumpers. And I was teasing one of the coaches. I said, look like he's getting ready to put a cigarette in his mouth and do a puff before he does the jumper, because it's like, ain't nobody bothering him.
Yeah.
He's 6'10", and he's just pulling up, shooting a jumper like nobody's even there. That's how I used to feel, you know, especially when I was in Buffalo. I just had nobody that could guard me.
He once received the ultimate compliment by the league's greatest winner, Bill Russell. He said that he was the best shooter of all time, period. That's what gave his team such an enormous advantage, because he ended up revolutionizing the center position. For many basketball historians, he was considered the first stretch big. He had an ultra soft touch from 20 feet and onward that helped spread the floor. He was a matchup nightmare for all the centers guarding him. He forced them out of the painted area because they respected his shots so much. This allowed him to drive right by them for easy shots at the rim. According to general manager Eddie Donovan, it was the fastest first step in the league. Nobody at that size had his scoring prowess. He was putting up scoring numbers that was only seen by Wilt and Kareem, except he was scoring most of his shots from the outside. The degree of difficulty simply felt more impressive than what we saw from any other big man.
Hey, Bob McAdoo was the MVP of this league. Yeah. When you talk about changing the game, he's a 6'11" dude shooting threes.
He was the first
first stretch forward, the original, the real one.
So he changed the game.
He totally changed the game.
How ironic is it that the player that was once considered too small to play center finished first in scoring for the second straight year, along with fourth in rebounds and sixth in blocks. His end-of-the-year rankings show another side to this all-time great. He was a fantastic rebounder and a well-respected shot blocker. He wasn't an intimidating force like most centers were during that time, but he also wasn't a pushover. On defense, he would bang down the lane and barrel his way into rebounding position. Then he would spring over the top for rebounds or swat away shots from penetrating guards. To give an idea of the reputation that he had as a rim protector, Walt Frazier said this about him in 1974. Near the basket, he's almost a Bill Russell. He proved game in and game out that he had the complete package. But there were instances where he was looking to make a statement. Nothing was more impressive than what he did against the Houston Rockets. He ended up with 51 points on 71% shooting, 20 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, and 2 blocks. How could anyone not believe that he was the best player in the world after a performance like that? There were also 2 other games where he posted over 40 points and 20 rebounds. Out of the 21 times that he scored over 40 points that season, he shot over 60% in 12 of those games. Thanks to his dominant play, the Buffalo Braves won 49 games, which was the 3rd best record in the league. He had the numbers and the team's success to have a worthy case for being the MVP. In my opinion, this was the most competitive race of that decade. He was battling against Kareem, Rick Barry, Tiny Archibald, Elvin Hayes, and Dave Cowens. They were all in their prime, and they all had remarkable seasons. It was a close call, and I wouldn't blame anyone who believes that Rick Barry should have won it that year. But the fact that Bob raised his game above all of them gives us an idea of how great he was during his prime. He deserves all the credit in the world for what he was able to accomplish. However, it must be noted that the Braves were not a one-man show. They were able to build the right personnel to take advantage of the speed they had in their front line. They traded Elmore Smith to Los Angeles for Jim McMillan. If you remember, he was the X factor for the legendary season the Lakers had in 1972, where they won 69 games, including 33 straight. They also obtained Gar Hurd from Chicago. Randy Smith was lightning quick and was a very skilled scorer. Jack Marin was their veteran small forward who received 2 All-Star selections in the early 70s. And let's not forget Ernie D. I know we toss the term underrated a lot, but if it wasn't for injuries, this could have been one of the most skilled and exciting point guards of his time. This was a deep roster, and they felt ready to compete for a championship.
That was a good franchise.
Really good players and a coach who won an NBA championship.
They had a very good run up to 76. They get 2 6-game hard-fought 2 6-game series with the Celtics in 74 and 76. They were very competitive. It was a fun place to go. The Buffalo Odd it rocked. It was good, and they had terrible ownership. Paul Snyder first, and then John Y. Brown. But it was a good franchise. It was good, and I love those games with that team.
But their road to the finals was going to be extremely tough. The 2 best teams in the league came in the Eastern Conference. The Washington Bullets and the Boston Celtics both won 60 games. They knew they were going to have to go through them. After receiving the first round bye, their first matchup was against Elvin Hayes, Wes Unseld, and the Bullets. Facing that Hall of Fame front line was going to be difficult enough, but their biggest strength was their defense, and they were as tough as you can get. They finished first in defensive rating in opponents' field goal percentage. They also finished second in opponents' points per game.
Yeah, Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes, I used to love to go at those guys because they were the top guys in the league. You know, Wes Unseld, Elvin Hayes, Dave Cowens. I just love to go against them because they were, supposedly all defensive type guys. And you know me, my motto has always been best offense trumps the best defense. That was my mindset, Coop. That was my mindset.
This was going to be the ultimate test for the MVP and scoring champion. Was he good enough to impose his will against such a tough defense? Or was he just a good regular season performer? Whatever critics he had, he shut them all up in Game 1. He went to the Capitol Center and proved why he was the best player in the world. They won the game behind his strong performance. He had 35 points on 57% shooting, 14 rebounds, 5 blocks, and 2 steals. He delivered the first blow and made it clear that this was going to be a long series. But the Bullets were able to take the next 2 games. They won convincingly, and the pressure of their season came down to the shoulders of the MVP. they couldn't afford to go down 3-1. That's when Bob McAdoo had one of the greatest performances in playoff history.
But it's regained by Buffalo.
Did you see that move then?
Bringing it down, McAdoo with 20 points in the first half. Make it for Buffalo. Over here to McAdoo. Randy Smith with a good fake. McAdoo, 8 rebounds this quarter.
Yes! Oh! And that's not good.
Bullets officials told me they've got tickets still available. McAdoo.
And McAdoo gets a standing ovation, and he well deserves it.
He ended the game with this historic stat line: 50 points on 63% shooting, 21 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 2 steals. This is only the 5th time in league history that a player has posted over 50 points and 20 rebounds in a playoff game, and nobody has done it since. Bob credited much of his success to the fact that he did not have to guard Elvin Hayes. He said this after the game: "I'm probably much more effective on offense if I don't have to guard Elvin. I don't have to worry about getting into foul trouble, and I can save more of my energy for the offense." End of quote. Little did they know that this game plan that helped them win Game 4 was going to blow right in their face for Game 5. That's when the Big E responded with the greatest playoff performance of his career. He had 46 points on 73% shooting, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks, and 3 steals. It was a legendary response. Buffalo was now facing elimination. They looked to their leader to save their season, and he didn't disappoint. In Game 6, he did just enough to lead his team to a 6-point victory. He had 37 points on 48% shooting, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists. It was remarkable to see the way he was leading his team to victories in such a competitive series. The Washington Bullets were clearly the better team, but the greatness of Bob McAdoo was proving to be too much for them. He was giving them all they could handle. Unfortunately, it all came to an end in Game 7. The greatness of an individual will never get the best of a great team in a 7-game series. If we look at the box score, Bob did all he could do to push his team past the finish line. But Washington executed what they did best, and they used their defensive toughness to shut down the rest of his teammates. On the other end, they used a balanced scoring attack to overwhelm the Braves. Phil Chenier had the game of his life and recorded his playoff career high of 39 points. Then Kevin Porter also contributed with a strong 24-point performance. It was too much for Buffalo to handle, and they lost by 19 points. Bob deserves credit for pushing the eventual Eastern Conference champions to the limit, but it was the way he did it that truly paints a picture of how great he was. Remember, he was facing the best defensive team in the league. For this series, he averaged 37.4 points on 48% shooting and 13.4 rebounds per game. There was truly no defense that could stop him. That's when you know that you're dealing with an iconic scorer. When discussing the greatest scoring seasons, Bob McAdoo's 1975 season hardly ever gets mentioned, but he proved in the biggest moments that he deserves to be among the top of that list. 50 years later, and we're seeing his influence more and more. The fans of today should recognize who was the man that started it all. But what about you all? What do you remember the most about this season? Where would you have it ranked among the greatest scoring seasons? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.